Welcome back to the MA English Cafe, the place where we help you sound as confident as you feel. Today, we're tackling a big, ambitious topic: how to speak English like a leader.
Now, when we say leader, we need to be very clear. We're not talking about being a loud, aggressive boss who just barks orders and expects everyone to follow. I think we've all had one of those. I worked for a guy once who thought leadership was about using the biggest, most complicated, most obscure words he could find in the dictionary. He'd stand up in meetings and say things like, "We must forthwith effectuate a paradigm shift in our synergistic marketing endeavors to ameliorate our quarterly outcomes."
And what on earth does that even mean? I think my brain just shut down trying to process that sentence.
It means we need to try a new way to sell things starting now to make more money. He thought it made him sound powerful and intelligent, but honestly, it just made him sound confusing and completely out of touch. No one knew what he was talking about half the time, and everyone was too intimidated to ask. That's not leadership. That's just a walking thesaurus with a superiority complex. True leadership and communication is the exact opposite. It's about clarity, it's about confidence, and most importantly, it's about connection.
That's so true. I once had a professor at university who was the most commanding and respected speaker I've ever met, but she was incredibly softly spoken. She never raised her voice. But when she spoke, the entire lecture hall of 300 students was completely silent, hanging on her every word. Her power didn't come from volume or complicated language. It came from the way she structured her sentences. They were simple, clear, and every single word had a purpose. There was no fluff, no wasted energy. She'd pause, look around the room, make eye contact, and then deliver a perfectly crafted sentence. That deliberate, calm confidence was mesmerizing.
Exactly. And the great news is that this is a skill, not an innate talent. In fact, some of the most impressive and leader-like speakers I've ever worked with were non-native English speakers. They were so effective precisely because they didn't rely on a lot of confusing fluff or regional slang. They had to learn the language strategically, so they focused on the most important thing: being understood. Their speech was clear, intentional, and powerful.
That is the core of it all. Speaking like a leader isn't about having a perfect native-like accent or a massive encyclopedic vocabulary. It's about how you use the words you already know to inspire confidence. Not just in yourself, but in the people listening to you. It's about making people want to listen. And today, we're going to break down the practical, learnable techniques that will help you do exactly that. If you're ready to unlock your inner leader, make sure you're subscribed to MA English so you don't miss any of our tips.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are the key actionable ingredients of leader-like speech? The first, and arguably the most important one, is radical simplicity and clarity. Like we said, true leaders don't use complicated jargon to sound smart. They take complex, messy ideas and make them simple and understandable for everyone. Their goal isn't to show off their intelligence, it's to share it.
Yes, they cut through the noise. Think about the most famous, most memorable speeches in history. They're almost always made up of simple, powerful Anglo-Saxon words. No one ever inspired a nation by saying, "We must endeavor to facilitate a multi-pronged strategic initiative for the betterment of our society." They say things like, "We will fight on the beaches," or "I have a dream." The same is true in a business meeting. A leader doesn't say, "Let's circle back at a later juncture to synergize our core competencies." They say, "Let's focus on what we do best." It's about being direct in your message, but polite in your delivery.
The second ingredient is using confident phrasing. This is all about actively identifying and removing the weak, hesitant, apologetic language that we all use when we're nervous or unsure. These are called hedging words. Phrases like, I think maybe we should possibly, I'm not an expert, but this might be a silly idea, but these phrases immediately signal to the listener that you don't fully believe in what you're about to say, so why should they?
It's like apologizing for your idea before you've even said it. It's a self-sabotage. Let's do a quick A-B comparison. A hesitant speaker might say, I sort of feel like we could maybe try to finish this by Friday if that's okay with everyone. It's weak, it's full of hedges, and it ends with a question. A leader says, I recommend we set a deadline of Friday for this task. This will allow us enough time for a final review. Same goal, completely different energy. The first is a timid suggestion. The second is a clear, confident proposal with a logical reason.
The third ingredient is mastering the power of the pause. This is such a simple but profoundly effective tool. Nervous speakers tend to talk very, very fast because they're afraid of silence. They see silence as a void and they rush to fill every available microsecond with filler words like ums, uhs, likes, and you knows. Confident speakers aren't afraid of silence. They understand that silence is a tool. They use pauses for emphasis, to let a key point sink in, or just to give themselves a moment to think before they speak. A well-placed pause makes you sound thoughtful and in control, not rushed and anxious. If you find these practical tips helpful for building your confidence, we'd really appreciate a quick like on the video.
All right, let's talk about some next level techniques that really separate a good speaker from a leader. The first is consistently using the active voice. This is a subtle grammar point that makes a huge psychological difference. The passive voice is often weak, evasive, and avoids responsibility. The active voice is strong, direct, and shows ownership. For example, if there's a problem at work, a weak speaker using the passive voice might say, unfortunately, a mistake was made in the report.
The classic mistakes were made line, famously used by politicians. It magically happened all by itself. No one is responsible.
Exactly. A leader will use the active voice and take ownership, which builds trust. They'll say, I made a mistake in the report, and here's how I'm going to fix it. Or when celebrating a success, they won't say, the project was completed successfully. They'll say, our team completed the project successfully. It's direct, it assigns credit where it's due, and it demonstrates accountability, which is a core trait of leadership.
Another incredibly powerful tool is storytelling. Leaders understand that human beings are not wired to connect with spreadsheets and bullet points. They are hardwired to connect with stories. Stories are how we make sense of the world, how we share values, and how we remember information. Instead of just presenting data and facts, a great leader will wrap those facts in a simple, relatable story. Instead of saying, our new customer support initiative increased customer satisfaction by 20%, a leader might say, I want to tell you about a customer named Sarah. She was struggling with a problem for weeks, but because of the hard work of our support team, we were able to solve it for her. I have an email from her here that says, you turned a frustrating experience into a wonderful one. Stories like Sarah's are why our customer satisfaction grew by 20% last quarter. It makes the information emotional, memorable, and human.
Finally, and this is the most important mindset shift, especially for non-native speakers, focus on connection, not perfection. Stop worrying about every little grammar mistake. Stop obsessing over whether your accent is perfect. Your audience, your team, your colleagues, they don't care about that. They care if you are clear. They care if you are passionate, and they care if you are connecting with them on a human level.
That is the ultimate secret. True, authentic confidence doesn't come from having flawless grammar. It comes from believing that what you have to say is valuable and from focusing all your energy on delivering that value to your audience. When you do that, you stop focusing on yourself and your own anxieties. So, to speak like a leader, speak simply, speak with confident phrasing, own your mistakes, tell stories, and above all, focus on connecting with the people you're speaking to.
And that's how you can start speaking English like a leader today. It's a practice, not a destination.
Thanks for joining us at the MA English Cafe. Go out there and be heard. We'll see you in the next episode.